All right, now in today's module, we're gonna be going over exactly what is included when it comes to your circadian clock. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with what this is, it's basically your biological clock that is built into our entire being. So every organ, every piece of tissue, every cell in our body operates on this 24-hour sleep and awake time clock. Now, in this module, we're going to go over exactly is why it's so hard to fall asleep at night now in the modern world, because, at one point in our ancestry, sleep was second nature. It used to be one of the easiest things known to man because it's so natural to do so, and we've kind of lost touch with that. So why is sleeping, which was something that was so natural before, why is that so hard all of a sudden? And the difference between us and our ancestors, and what the Industrial Revolution has done to us as a species, and what your circadian clock is responsible for and how it affects our health, and what to do moving forward. So not only talking about the problem, but also giving you a solution. So the difference between today, so you and I, and our ancestors from, hundreds of years ago. I made a Canva, basically, presentation because I had to adjust some graphics that weren't applicable in the keynote. So I'm going to start the presentation through Canva. All right, so here we have a 24-hour clock. This was based on 200 years ago. So you have the sun, which starts around 6 a.m., then you have high noon, and then at 6 p.m. the sun goes down, which results into having a 12-hour cycle of complete darkness because they didn't have electricity back then. And with no electricity, they basically had tons of physical activity, but it was limited to a 12-hour window when the sun comes up and when the sun goes down. Now, back then, 200 years ago, what they were doing throughout their day was they were running their shops, running their farms, helping their kids, doing school, going to get fresh water. They were always outside, and physical activity was in abundance during the bright daylight hours. And then once the sun went down, they couldn't go find fresh water. They couldn't go run their farm because the daylight was gone. Now it's time to go in to cook dinner, to settle down with the kids, and then fall asleep, and then kind of repeat that process all over again. And when it comes to food, they also had a shorter eating window as well. So food was scarce back then. You can't go to the farm and pick food. You can't go and butcher animals when it's completely dark out because they didn't have porch lights. They didn't have, lights to shine on to what they were doing unless they held a candle, but that light was limited. So they were really limited to what the sun could offer. And as soon as the sun was down, they really had to go inside and, wind down for sleep. So because of this, they had a great balance between physical activity, eating big meals throughout the day, and then once the sun was down, then they had plenty of time to rest, get ready for bed, wind down, and really build that melatonin. Now, looking at what is common today, especially with business owners, basically anyone that has access to a computer and uses their computer for their primary source of income, which is a lot of people globally nowadays. Because of this ready at hand electricity, their 24-hour clock looks very different, right? Because we have about a 6-hour window of complete darkness. Now we have about 18 hours of brightness because of phones, ceiling lights, basically every piece of electricity. Now the difference is huge. This is what it looked like a couple years ago. This is what it looks like today. Now, what this is doing to our system is pretty catastrophic. Lots of studies are proving that metabolic disorder, cancer, Alzheimer's, all of these things are very long set issues that stem from not being on this proper 24-hour clock because it's very different nowadays. And we'll get into a lot of what happens long term when you follow this not ideal clock that nature did not intend for us. But now, what does this result in when it comes to sleep and the gym? So remember, 200 years ago, physical activity took up half of this time, and it was very prominent because they were out running their stuff. Now, if you're looking at business owners, typical 9-to-5ers, people who work in the office, people who are on computers all day, they have about a 1 hour to 2 hour window of high exercise, high activity exercise, which is going to the gym. We no longer have that prominent physical activity from when the sun is up until when the sun goes down. And that gym is most likely inside. So you're not even getting your physical activity in natural daylight. It's in fluorescent fake lighting. And sleep obviously is different because it's pretty common for people to fall asleep around midnight, wake up around 8, 9, depending on who the person is. So this is also shifted as well. Now, where it gets interesting is not only is our sleep schedule shifted way later than when it's supposed to be, and our physical activity is drastically reduced, but our eating window is drastically more. Physical activity and our eating window almost switched spots. So now what we're doing is we're in our home falling asleep. We wake up, we make breakfast, hopefully you guys aren't intermittent fasting anymore. You get in your car, you go to work, you're in your office all day. You might leave to go to the gym for an hour or two, and then you come back and then you go back home. So when are you having any opportunity to get natural sunlight? You're not. And then a lot of you guys, since you're inside all day, even when you go to the gym and exercise, you're still inside, you're not getting any natural light. And then all of a sudden, when it's 6, 7, 8, 9 p.m. and you're trying to wind down, let's say you're on your phone or you're watching YouTube, you are giving your body blue light right before bed. So this is super confusing to your body because you're getting no natural light throughout the day. And then the last couple hours when you're trying to wind down and you're trying to relax, you're actually doing the opposite effect and you're offsetting your entire sleep schedule. Now, this whole process, which doctors are theorizing, is one of the root causes of most diseases. So like I said, cancer, Alzheimer's, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome. So all of these things can contribute to it because it's so different. Now, just to show you again a side-by-side comparison, this is what it used to be. This is what it is now. So lots of daylight, less sleep, and it's not even real daylight. It's artificial light, which is even worse for your body. It's very, very stressful to our cells. Now, hopefully this shows a really good picture of the difference between what our bodies are used to and what we're dealing with today. Because even though our lifestyles from 200 years ago to today are very, very different, physiologically, we are the exact same. So imagine the stress that this is putting on our bodies, and that stress will show up eventually if this continues. So going back to the presentation, the next thing I want to talk about is circadian disruption and our wellness, a timeline. So just to really prove to you what is happening inside the body when you get no daylight throughout the day. You know, you're stuck in your office, you don't go for that morning walk, you're just inside all the time, not getting a lot of sunlight. And then in the evening time, you're either working on your computer or you are on your phone and you're emitting that bright blue light that was brighter than the light you were being exposed to in the morning. This is what will happen in the short-term, medium-term, and long-term game. So the short term. So this is for the people who have a good schedule 80% of the time, but let's say a couple times in a row, you had to put out some fires in your business, or you had to do something in your business that pushed you off your regular schedule. You might do this 1 day in a row, 2 days in a row, maybe for an entire weekend. Let's say you're taking care of family members or whatever your scenario is. The short-term results are going to be mood swings, maybe a little fatigue. You're going to have compromised learning, so memorizing things and then repeating things are going to be more difficult. Maybe a little bit of irritability, so you're more cranky. This is not too bad, but this is only the short term. So this is what happens when you go down this path a couple days in a row. Next, after you've done this for a couple days in a row, let's say this turns into a weekly thing. So let's say something bigger is in your business. Let's say COVID hits, your business is going under and you need to act fast and you are just all over the place. You're staying up later, waking up earlier, you're not going outside at all, you're just like hustle, hustle, hustle. If you do this for a couple weeks, this is going to be your results. So you're going to develop really bad sleep patterns. You're going to switch from a healing phase, so the rest and digest. You're going to get more stressed and you're going to be stuck in this chronically adrenal state, meaning that you are running off stress hormones, your sleep is really bad, and you're waking up constantly. You're going to bed later and you're waking up super early because you're just stuck in this cortisol state. And then you're going to have early onset obesity. So losing weight is going to be harder because of all your hormones. They're going to be really messed up. You're going to have systematic inflammation. So having brain fog, achy joints, that's going to happen. You might have something more mental. So anxiety, ADHD, you're having a really hard time focusing. Again, compromised learning. All of these things will stack up on each other. And if you don't see these red flags early on, this is what's going to happen maybe 10, 15, 20 years down the road. Once you've had all of these warning signs, you might get gut dysbiosis. So you might get IBS or SIBO when bacteria are overgrowing in your intestine, in your small intestine, causing bloating, constipation, or diarrhea. You're having a really hard time absorbing foods. Gut dysbiosis is really bad because that controls a lot of other things like your immune system. You might develop depression, insomnia. So you go from compromised learning, a little bit of fatigue, daily fatigue, to bad sleep patterns, to full-on insomnia. So these things will happen if you follow this really bad circadian rhythm. Glucose intolerance, so that goes back into early onset obesity, insulin resistance, compromised immunity. And then once you have all of these, possibly, then cancer and Alzheimer's. That is probably the worst thing to happen to you guys. So that's why it's so important to look at your circadian rhythm and make sure you are just being aware. So my next slide, be aware of your light and food exposure. Are you following our body's natural clock? So that 24-hour cycle we were talking about, getting good sunlight exposure in the morning and staying off your phones in the evening, and then also not eating, big meals randomly throughout the day or like right before bed, because that also tells our body what time it is. So just be aware of when you're exposing your things to these two items of information. Now, pre and post-industrial revolution. So what was going on before and after we invented a thing called electricity? So why are we so sensitive? Our bodies are constantly taking information, the cells in our skin, the retina in our eyes, and our meal times are all collected information that inform the body of what time it is. Now, when light is going through our retina into our hypothalamus, this controls everything. So memory, hormones, cell cycle, peripheral clocks, motor activity, mood, cognitive performance, autonomic nervous system, and sleep, most importantly. We are sensitive because it's almost switched. It's opposite. We're getting no daylight throughout the day, and we're getting all the bright blue light in the evening time. And we actually have a special protein called melanopsin, which is a blue light sensing protein. Now, this is going to be really key when we're looking at melatonin levels, when we're having, alertness throughout the day and then sleepiness throughout the night. So the importance of understanding melanopsin and the whole biological system. What should be happening, what our ancestors were experiencing, and what we should be experiencing today if we're following the right protocols is at night, because of melanopsin, we are less sensitive to candlelight and orange light. Sleep hormone melatonin is firing off correctly, and sleep is efficient and restful. So looking at your aura metrics, seeing that you have a wake time less than 45 minutes. I know for me, I'm getting down to like the 20-minute mark, which is pretty crazy because it also involves your latency, so how long it takes for you to fall asleep, and then also staying asleep. So not only is my wake times very, very little, around 30 minutes, but I'm not waking up throughout the night, and it's easy to fall asleep, and I feel very alert when I'm waking up. Now, during the day, so bright daylight activates melanopsin. It's raising alertness and cognitive awareness. It also reduces depression and improves mood, so no mood swings. You're a lot more stable, which is really key as a business owner, because how are you supposed to run a business, show up with energy for your clients, for your employees, for your entire team, if you don't have a stable mood, if you are experiencing depression? It's going to be a lot harder, because circling back to week 1, if you are in a stressed state, if you are in a negative, depressed, irritable state, you can't be creative. You can't be in a healing state and a chronically stressed state at the same time. You have to pick one or the other. And being in a chronically stressed state is the same as not being aware, not having cognitive awareness, being in a depressed state and having not a stable mood. So just to give you a quick insight to how it was a couple hundred years ago, I'm sure you guys are aware of this, but we didn't have electricity. And what we did before then, before bulbs were invented, was once the sun went down, that was it. That's all they had for light source. And if they wanted something else, they had candles and oil, but that was very expensive, and it was almost like a hot commodity. Like if you had that, you were from a wealthy family. And when it was daylight, they were absorbing tons of natural sunlight from the sun, which is what it should be. Now, what we're dealing with currently in today's world, especially with business owners and people who live off the internet and that's how they make their income, is you have bright screens before bed. So this activates melanopsin during the nighttime when it should actually be activated during the day. It reduces the sleep hormone melatonin, and it's harder to fall asleep. Once asleep, it's very restless. And gloomy indoor days. So not only are you, activating melanopsin before bed, but during the day, you're not really getting outside, you're stuck inside. So hormones don't know when to fire off properly, creating a lot of gray area. You have reduced focus and alertness, and you have brain fog, mood swings, and reduced mood. So in summary, what you guys want to focus on is you want to be the disciplined and optimized. So this guy right here, you don't want to be the weak and erratic. Now the main difference is that the disciplined and the optimized, they have great sleep, they have enhanced muscle retention, they have a properly functioning liver, cell division and repair, mood is controlled, and strong energy throughout the day. So no fatigue dips, no afternoon crash. And how this person accomplishes this is they get sunlight throughout the day, they go for morning walks, they sit by a window, they get outside as much as possible, and they have a very strict wind down protocol in regards to light manipulation. So if you are still wondering what to do when it comes to your wind down routine, definitely check out week 2 and week 3, because in those weeks I talk about your wind down routine, your morning routine, and I also have a module all about light manipulation that discusses what exactly to do. And the weak and erratic, so these are for the people who let their business consume them. So they put their business first before their health. They don't care what they're doing. They make no boundaries. They have their phone on them all the time. They have their computer in their bedroom. They're on their laptop in their bed working, checking emails. It's super late. There's no boundaries. And they are the slave to their business. It's not the other way around. And this creates a weak environment because you have no self-discipline. What this causes when it comes to putting your business first and not keeping your health a priority and really sticking to your wind down and morning routines is this has high awake times. It can cause depression, brain diseases. So like I said, Alzheimer's. You have muscle loss. Like I've said before, muscle is not made in the gym. It's made when you're at home recovering. So the muscle tissue, once it's ripped, it can rebuild. This could lead to high blood pressure, insulin resistance, and fatty liver disease. So who knew just the wrong timing of light, honestly, could cause all these things within the human body? It's pretty crazy to think about, but that's how important it is to make sure on a cellular level, on the deepest part of your core, every single cell is following this correct 24-hour biological clock. Now you might be wondering what these squiggly lines are. This is basically a quick sketch or representation of your clock. So when you are disciplined and optimized, you have bright sunlight in the morning and then you have no light in the evening. And this creates a very strong signal where your hormones are operating, your cells are operating, your liver is just doing its thing, and everything is working very nicely. Now, when you don't get a lot of sunlight in the morning and you get a little bit of screen time in the evening time, your body's like, I don't know what time it is, so I'm just going to kind of send off hormones throughout the entire day. There's no strong signal. So when there's no strong signal, there's no control, there's no structure to it. And that's when you get all of these issues down the road. But now really quickly, I want to show you guys what the actual solution is and what we recommend in regards to optimizing your circadian rhythm. So going back to Canva, I'm going to present this again. And this is what we were doing 200 years ago. Obviously, this is optimal. So if we could pick what the perfect schedule is for our bodies, it would be this. But of course, we can't compare ourselves to our ancestors because our lifestyle is completely different, and that would be very unrealistic because we have more of a social life. We have, nightclubs and electricity, and we have families, and it's just part of our culture and our society to have electricity and to stay up a little bit later. So in order to be more realistic and while still abiding by, the peak performance way, this is what our ideal schedule would look like for you guys. So while still maintaining this midnight and high noon schedule where it's kind of split down the middle, it's pushed forward a little bit later. Most of you guys wake up between 6 a.m. and around 9:30 a.m., I would say. So just to be kind of speaking in general, what we recommend is having a morning walk first thing in the morning, or doing whatever you want to do first thing in the morning. Just make sure you're getting outside. So whether that's walking your dog, going on your back patio, doing some yoga, whatever it is that brings you enjoyment. If you don't know exactly what to do in the morning, refer back to our morning and wind down routine module because we discuss all about that. But whatever it is, make sure you're getting outside first thing in the morning for quite a bit of time. And for bonus points, set up your office by a bright window so you're getting direct sunlight through your window. That's another way to get sunlight throughout the day without actually having to spend time outside. And then gym. So again, having any physical activity again sometime in the afternoon. This can be a morning walk and then another walk. This could be, you could do the gym in the morning and then a walk later in the day. However, I would recommend if you pick a time to go outside, I would pick morning, because when you get sunlight first thing in the morning, you are strengthening that relationship, that bond between the sun, cortisol and morning, the time that it means the most. So what I recommend is morning walk, gym in the afternoon, and then getting into the evening time around 6 p.m. That's usually when the sun goes down. Put on your blue light blocking glasses or start following your specific light integration wind down routine. And what I mean by that is usually what I do from when the sun goes down around 6 p.m. up until when I go to bed is I no longer use my bright ceiling lights. So I switch to night mode, I guess you can say, in regards to my entire house, where I turn off all my bright ceiling lights and I only use like little accent lights, like the one above my stove or the one above my shower. They're just like a single bulb that emit some light, but they're not super shocking. Pair that with a Himalayan salt lamp. So I have 4 Himalayan salt lamps throughout my house, and those go on when the sun goes down. Now, in regards to blue light blocking glasses, I only put these on if I'm looking at screens. So let's say it's like 8, 9 p.m. I'm like reading a book. I'm reading my Kindle, or I'm on my phone or watching YouTube. That's when I'll put on the blue light blocking glasses. I don't wear them this entire time. And following the eating window. So I recommend having an eating window between right when you wake up till around 6 p.m., 7 p.m., depending on when your bedtime is. I recommend if you are going to bed around 11, 10, not having a meal any later than, let's say, 8. So make sure you have around a 2 to 3 hour window between having your last large meal, not a snack, but like an actual meal, and going to bed. However, one thing that is very different between us and our ancestors is that we have a whole lot more stress. And as a society, they had properly functioning livers, so they could store more glucose and get throughout the night without releasing a stress response, which I've talked about a couple times so far, so you should be familiar with what that means. So now, as a modern society, we are more stressed. So what I recommend is having your last large meal around between 6 and 8 p.m. depending on when you go to bed, but then having a small snack. So having a snack won't disrupt your sleep because it's not that much to digest. It's not the same as a full meal. And when you have a carb, it's easier to digest than a protein. So right before bed, having a carb is amazing because it replenishes your glucose stores in your liver, your glycogen. And for that snack, I recommend it could be homemade organic ice cream, it could be a glass of milk, it could be tea with honey, it could be really anything that has a carb. That will ensure that your liver has enough glucose to get through the night and do all of its functions that it needs that sugar for.